Monster City Madhouse, a year-round online store full of Halloween and classic horror shirts, with an emphasis on the vintage look. Use code SAVE10 for 10% off your order. MonsterCityMadhouse.com. Free shipping and financing's available. Welcome back to Southern Ghost Stories. I am the American Haunt Historian, Alan Searcy. Glad you guys are with me. Hey, spring is here, lots of wild stuff going on. I'm here, there, and yonder. This weekend you'll catch me at the Knoxville Book Festival. I'm doing 2 panels, one I think on writing about history, also about selling and marketing books. So if you're in Knoxville or you're in East Tennessee, it's going to be a good time. There's, I'm terrible with all the names, but the guy who did Maze Runner, there's a bunch of big name authors, guys, a lot bigger names than me will be there, and it's going to be a good time. But I'll be slinging books, signing books, telling stories, doing some panels. It's going to be a good time. Next weekend I'll be in Portland for the Strawberry Festival, Portland, Tennessee. Not Portland, Oregon, just got to make sure everybody knows that. And then the following weekend's Louisville. Really excited for that one. So Louisville HorrorCon's the show. So I guess, speaking of Louisville, today I want to do a show about Louisville. And I've talked about it before, and I've teased it, and I've told stories, but I really want to take a deep dive into Waverly Hills. So today, we're heading to Louisville, Kentucky, to a place that saw more suffering than most hospitals in American history. It's a place where thousands came to heal, and most never really left. This is the story of Waverly Hills. Before it was one of the most infamous haunted locations in America, Waverly Hills was just a quiet stretch of farmland in Kentucky. Rolling hills, open sky, and a life far removed from the noise of the city. In the mid-1800s, a Confederate officer named Major Thomas Hayes returned home to Louisville after the war. And like a lot of men from that time, he didn't just come back with memories of the battlefield. Within a year of returning, he was burying his wife Nancy, the woman he had married just as the war began. And the loss didn't stop there. The couple had only one child, a daughter named Emma. Just a few years later, she was gone too, dead at only 4 years old. It was the kind of grief that doesn't leave a man. But Hayes, he kept moving forward. As the years passed, he built a new life, throwing himself into work, particularly the booming railroad industry. He became successful, well-connected, and eventually remarried. With his new wife, Georgia, he had several more children, and by his mid-40s, he'd become a respected figure in Kentucky, both in business and in politics. On paper, he had everything, but the city and everything it represented had taken its toll. Hayes wanted something quieter, something simpler. So in 1883, he made a decision that would unknowingly shape the future of one of the most infamous locations in American history. He purchased a large farm in Jefferson County, Kentucky, about 10 miles southwest of Louisville, tucked into the rolling hills near the Ohio River. Out there, life slowed down. The land was beautiful, the air was cleaner, and for the first time in years, there was a sense of peace. So, his family, they thrived in the countryside, but there's one problem: education. The nearest school was nearly 4 miles away. It was a long journey for young children, especially in rough weather. It wasn't practical and it wasn't safe. One day while sitting on the porch of his home, Hayes found himself staring at a small empty building across the road, just at the base of a hill. A simple one-room structure, unused, forgotten. But to Hayes, it looked like an opportunity. And speaking with the neighbor who owned it, he secured permission to use the building. Then he reached out to other families in the area, just farmers raising children like him. Together, they agreed that little building would become a schoolhouse. Around that same time, a young woman had arrived in the area looking for work. Her name was Elizabeth Harris, though most folks called her Lizzie. Hayes hired her as a teacher. She moved in with the family and quickly became part of daily life. After school hours, Lizzie could almost always be found sitting on the porch, lost in a book. Her favorite author was Sir Walter Scott. and she was especially fond of his Waverly novels. Day after day, page after page, she disappeared in those stories. And then one afternoon, something clicked. She looked up from her book, out across the road, at the little schoolhouse nestled against the hillside, and the name came to her, Waverly. It was perfect. A reflection of the story she loved. When she shared the name, Major Hayes liked it immediately. There was something about it that felt right. Not just because of the books, but because of the land itself. The hills seemed to roll and bend, almost like they were waving. Waverly Hills. The name stuck. At first, it was just a schoolhouse. Then it became the name of the Hayes farm. And eventually, it became the name of the hill itself. At the time, it meant nothing more than a quiet country life, a place of family, learning, fresh beginnings. But that peace wouldn't last. Because just a few decades later, that same hillside will become ground zero for one of the most deadliest epidemics in American history. Everything would change. By the early 1900s, Louisville had a serious problem: tuberculosis. They called it White Death, or the White Plague. It was relentless. The geography of Louisville made things worse. Low valleys, damp air, proximity to the Ohio River created the perfect breeding ground for the disease. It spread easily, and once it took hold, it didn't let go. Victims wasted away, slowly, fever, weakness, coughing up blood, until eventually it felt like drowning from the inside. At its peak, tuberculosis was responsible for 1 out of every 8 deaths in the city. The city needed a solution. So in 1908, officials approached Major Hayes. They wanted his land, not for development, but for isolation, a place to send the sick away from everyone else. Hayes agreed, and what followed would change that hill forever. In 1910, the first tuberculosis hospital opened on the property. It was small, just 40 patients. That didn't last long. Within a few years, the facility had expanded again and again and again. By 1926, Waverly Hills had become a massive, state-of-the-art medical complex. 500 beds, 28 buildings, 600 acres. It was considered one of the most advanced tuberculosis hospitals in America. Patients were given fresh air, sunlight, food, everything doctors believed might help them survive. But it wasn't enough. At its peak, there were around 1,500 patients crammed inside. And as the disease progressed, medicine got desperate. So doctors didn't fully understand tuberculosis or consumption. It had 2 names. So they tried everything, and some of it was brutal. They removed ribs, cut away muscle. They collapsed lungs on purpose. All in the hope that reducing strain would give patients a chance to breathe. Sometimes they even punctured the lungs, trying to kill the bacteria inside. These weren't treatments. They were gambles. Most patients died. Over the years, an estimated 10,000 to 20,000 people lost their lives at Waverly Hills. And the hospital had a way of dealing with the bodies. Death was everywhere inside at Waverly. But they didn't want the living to see it. They wanted the folks there to have some hope. So they built something hidden, a back door, so to speak, a long enclosed tunnel beneath the hospital. Originally, it was used for construction, but later repurposed. The dead were placed on gurneys, taken into the basement, and sent down that tunnel, away from the eyes of the patients still hoping to survive. It became known as the body chute. Quiet, efficient, constant. Because death never stopped there. By the 1940s, medical advances finally brought tuberculosis under control. Waverly Hills closed in 1961, but that building didn't stay empty. It reopened as a geriatric facility, a retirement home, Woodhaven. And things got worse. By the 1970s, it had become one of the most poorly run care facilities in Kentucky. Patients were neglected. conditions were filthy. At one point, inspectors reported urine in the hallways, feces in the chairs, and insects crawling on patients. Then came the incident that shut it all down. An 85-year-old man, he was confused and alone. He rolled his wheelchair off a loading dock. He didn't survive. Shortly after, the facility, they shut down for good. By 1981, Waverly Hills was empty, and that's when the stories began. For years, the building sat abandoned. Vandals broke in. Teenagers explored it. It was a rite of passage for kids who grew up in the area, right there along the Dixie Highway. Urban legends spread. Then in 2001, new owners stepped in. They didn't believe in ghosts at first, but that didn't last. Strange figures showed up on security cameras. Footsteps echoed in empty hallways. People were seen who weren't there. And slowly, the word spread. Waverly Hills, it wasn't just abandoned. It was alive. Visitors and staff report the same things, over and over, voices calling out, whispering, sometimes even mimicking people there. Shadows moving when nothing should be there in that spot. Full-body apparitions so real you don't realize what you're looking at until it disappears. One guide described walking up to what she thought was a guest on a tour, close enough to speak, and then gone. No footsteps, no sound, just gone. I talked to a lady who went for an overnight ghost hunt. She's walking down the hall around 1 a.m. Suddenly, she sees a man up ahead in the dark, a guy in her group. He stopped abruptly. She almost walked into him. But then, he wasn't there. He disappeared right in front of her. But not everything in Waverly is residual. Some of it feels aware. Visitors have reported being touched, pushed, followed. And then there's something worse. Big Black. People have lost time. Not minutes, hours, even days. One investigator turned on a camera in the lobby and saw something. It mapped out a figure. Tall, unnatural. It was Big Black and is moving towards him. The next thing he remembers, he woke up at home the next day with no memory of how he got there. Others have reported the same thing. Something in that building can take control, and it doesn't always give it back right away. Beware of Big Black. But not every story there is dark and malevolent. Some of the things there are almost gentle. There are reports of children inside Waverly, and one of the most well-known spirits there is a boy called Timmy. People roll balls across the floor. Sometimes they roll back. But even experienced investigators will tell you, not everything like that is paranormal. The building was designed to catch airflow. Those tuberculosis patients needed fresh air. Sometimes physics explain the airflow inside the big sanitarium there, but sometimes it doesn't. So there's a story that seems like everybody knows. It's room 502. If you've ever heard anything about Waverly Hills, this is probably it. The legend's been around for decades, passed from guide to guide, visitor to visitor, each time picking up just a little more drama. But there is some truth to it. According to the story, a young nurse working at Waverly Hills, she began having an affair with a married doctor. It wasn't supposed to happen, but it did. She became pregnant. In a place already filled with sickness, isolation, and death, there's no room for scandal. The story goes that she tried to hide it, that she ended the pregnancy alone, in secret, in one of the rooms on the 5th floor, room 502. and afterward, overwhelmed with shame, fear, and despair, she stepped out into the hallway. She found a light fixture or a pipe, depending on who's telling the story. She hanged herself. Some versions say when they found her, there was blood still running down her legs. It's a story that sticks with people. It's tragic, disturbing, and it feels just believable enough. But here's the problem. When you start looking at the details, it begins to fall apart. Waverly Hills wasn't just a hospital. It was a quarantine community. Staff lived there, worked there, stayed there. They didn't come and go. Nurses in the 30s weren't living glamorous lives. They weren't secretly carrying on affairs in a place where privacy barely existed. Most of them overworked, underpaid, and constantly exposed to a disease that could kill them. And maybe most importantly, the 5th floor, where room 502 is located, it wasn't just any ward. It housed some of the sickest patients in the entire building. Children, and those suffering from tubercular meningitis. Patients who needed constant care, constant attention, and fresh air. So the idea that a nurse would choose that very place in full view of the most vulnerable patients to carry out something like that, it doesn't make much sense. Even some of the longtime investigators and guides at Waverly have said the same thing. They told the story for years because it was the story. But deep down, they didn't buy it. Still, it doesn't mean nothing happened, because something did. People who spend time on that floor, especially around room 502, report the same things over and over. A presence, footsteps when no one's there, a figure standing at the end of the hall, a woman glimpsed out of the corner of your eye and gone when you turn to face her. Some say they've heard her crying. Others, they've heard a voice trying to speak. And then there are the investigators, the ones who don't just pass through, but come back again and again, trying to piece things together. Over time, a different story has started to take shape. Not from records, not from official reports, but from what they claim comes through during investigations. Fragments, words, responses to questions asked in the dark. One name has surfaced more than any other. Sara. Not shouted, not dramatic, just spoken. Clear enough that multiple people on different nights with different equipment have claimed to hear it. And the story tied to that name, isn't just about an affair. It isn't about shame. It's something far more disturbing. According to those who have spent years trying to communicate with whatever is there, Sara wasn't someone who took her own life. She was a young nurse, small in stature, soft-spoken, the kind of person you'd want working with children there in the sanitarium. She worked nights on the 5th floor, alone, more often than not. And one night, someone came up the stairs, not through the main entrance, not where they'd be seen, up the back way. There's no warning, no alarm. Some investigators say they picked up the phrase over and over again. No bell. Meaning no one announced themselves. No one was supposed to be there. And what happened next, if any of this is true, wasn't a tragedy born from desperation. It was violence, an attack, one she didn't survive. And the version of events that followed, the hanging, the scandal, the cover story, may have been something else entirely, something easier to explain, something that kept people from asking too many questions. Now, there's no official record that confirms any of this, no document that lays it out cleanly, but that hasn't stopped people from trying to connect the dots. Because over the years, investigators from all over the country, many of whom have never spoken to each other, have reported hearing the same name, Sara, Sara, Sara. It's the same fragments of the story, the same sense that whatever's there, it's not at peace. And whether you believe in that or not, one thing is hard to ignore. Room 502 has a reputation for a reason. People don't just walk in and feel nothing. There's something about it, a heaviness, like the air itself remembers something, even if history doesn't. And if there really is something there, someone trying to be heard, then maybe the story we've been telling all these years isn't just wrong. Maybe it's hiding something much, much worse. There's something about Waverly Hills that stands out. It's not just the number of deaths. It's not just the history. It's the feeling. Because when you walk through that building, you're not walking through an old hospital or a sanitarium. You're walking through years of fear, pain, desperation. Thousands of people fighting for their lives and losing. And maybe, possibly, some of them never left. And if you watch those ghost hunting shows, Waverly Hills is said to be one of the most haunted places in America. I tend to agree. Waverly Hills is still standing today. You can visit it. They offer tours during the day. You can rent it for investigations at night. You can walk the halls, see the rooms, spend the night. But if you do, just remember, you're not alone in there. You're stepping into a place where death was routine, where hope faded slowly, and where something still lingers. So if you want to learn more about Waverly Hills, don't forget to check out Southern Ghost Stories Louisville. It's a book I wrote a couple years ago. There's so much history in Louisville. You guys know I'm from Nashville, and Louisville and Nashville are a lot alike. They're all river towns. You got the Ohio River right there in Nashville. You got the Cumberland. A lot of the history is kind of the same. You know, it's just, it's a real old town, a lot of history, and a lot of weird history. So lots of fun folklore and great ghost stories in Derby City. Southern Ghost Stories Louisville. It's on Amazon. It is on Kindle. Barnes and Noble. I think some of the stores in Louisville may carry it. But yeah, you can always type in Amazon or Google. But check out Southern Ghost Stories Louisville. And speaking of Louisville, I'll be in Louisville for Louisville HorrorCon May 16th and May 17th. Just a few weeks away. They have some headliners. Linda Blair is going to be there. Jack Osborne. There's a lot of big names in paranormal and horror is going to be there. It's going to be a really fun show. I'm looking forward to it. I'll be there. I'll be signing books, and it's going to be fun. Just a few weeks away, I'll have books. Also, Below the Trestle, too. You mentioned Louisville. You got to talk about the Goat Man. So, Below the Trestle is my take on the Pope Goat Man, the creature that lives on the train trestle over in Pope Park, just east of downtown. So, anyway, if you've enjoyed this episode of Southern Ghost Stories, be sure to follow. Leave us a review, 5 stars, share it, please. And if you ever had an experience at Waverly Hills, I want to hear about it. I've had some pictures sent to me over the years from people who get things. I got an image of an old man one time, with a beard, really creepy. I had my own experience there. I've talked about multiple times on the show. So, yeah, you guys keep checking back with me, and I'll be in Knoxville this weekend. Come see me, Knoxville Book Festival. And I guess until next week, I'll see you guys later. Check out the exclusive shirts from Monster City Madhouse, Gravestone, Rocktober, and Val Halloween. All that and much more at monstercitymadhouse.com.